Good evening. I know. Good morning. Good evening. Almost morning. It's been a long day. It's been a great day though. A super great day. I had a blast. I got to be a part of cooking today and stuff. You know what I mean? And moving fast and stay out of my head. Um, and then tonight, I just did some praying and listening, and I'm like, I don't fully understand, but the Lord told me to speak on this, so I'm gonna listen to what He says. So He brought to mind Peter and the story about Jesus walking on the water, and so I was like, okay, and I was like, I was in the spirit and I could see it, and I could see the water, and I was also thinking about Noah, which is odd, But I thought about what was brought in my spirit, water, and how, like when they were out on the sea, because I was questioning, like, okay, so was it freshwater or saltwater? Well, it was obviously saltwater, because when you think about a storm coming in, like in the story in the Bible where it talks about like the wind was blowing, there was a storm, and um, they got scared, like they were frightened. Um, and to me, like when they knew Jesus was coming and they got frightened, wondering if it was a ghost, they they knew something was coming. Like they felt something coming, and they didn't know what it was, so they were frightened. And when I just looked at the story in the Bible, it says, "Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble, far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, 'It's a ghost.'" So, in their fear, they cried out that it was something that it wasn't, you know? Um, which is something that we can all do. In our fear, we can uh, cry out thinking things are something that they're not. And it says, "But Jesus spoke to them at once. 'Don't be afraid,' He said. 'Take courage. I am here.'" And so I was like, it was in my spirit to look this story up. And I was like thinking about when Peter lost sight of Jesus. And it says, "Then Peter called to him, 'Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you, walking on the water.' He said, 'Yes, come,' Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus." So I've been looking up what different things mean, and it's in here. It says a boat is never too small when God is watching over you. But you get out of the boat, and then it says Jonah's ship to Tarshish. No boat is safe when you're running away from God. And then it says James and John leave their fishing boat when Jesus calls, leaving everything behind. And then Jesus preached from the boat. God's message is not just for the church. And so I thought, when James and John left the boat, leaving everything behind, I thought about Peter before I even seen that. And I was like, so number one, they were already terrified and they were scared, and they thought it was something that it wasn't. right? Forgive me. I'm going to not mess with my hair, okay? I'm going to try not to. Okay, so, anyways. Um, and Peter got out of the boat, which was safe, and he asked Jesus, hey, look, I'm already terrified, but I want to make sure that it's you. So if you tell me to come, even though I'm terrified, I'm going to get out of what's safe and I'm going to come to you. Even though I'm not quite sure if it's you yet, I'm going to do it. And so I was like, Lord, really? Like, okay, so left everything behind, everything that felt safe, which if Jesus was in front of him, then whatever was safe was in front of him, not behind him when he was getting out. And so I was like, Lord, and then I thought about what water represents. And so the sea normally represents sin, right? And so that's where Noah came in, and I think about how the Lord covered the land with water and let Noah and his family escape. And so it was like sin covered the world, right? And so he told Noah more Noah and Noah built the ark. And so I think about the sea and how everything is happening right now. And then the story of Peter, I'm like, okay, so he was in the sea, walking on the sea, and how it says Jesus walked over. And I think about how making his enemies his footstool, which if he was walking on the water, sin, he would be walking over sin. And so Peter was like, Lord, tell me to leave what's safe and come walking to you on top of the sin, making my enemy my footstool, which is all this craziness going on in the world. And then they said that he took his eyes off of Jesus and he sunk. And here it says, so Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. So when I think about that, I think about, did he take his eyes off of the Lord, or did he realize what he was walking on? Like, you know what I mean? Like, was he like, whoa, like, this is crazy? Because if you think about it, like, the sea is huge. You know what I mean? Like, that is a lot of sin, corruption, um, just tons of stuff. So he was like walking over it away from what was behind him, which was safe, which I think about, like, for me, like, I put myself there and I think about, like, leaving home was safe for me. Like, I've come to California and I'm like, this is not for me, but like, I can't go back because that is no good. And so, like I think about, like, I constantly have my eyes fixated on the Lord. And so I was thinking about Peter and I was thinking about Noah, and I was like, the sea and water being sin. And I was talking about um, a dream that my dad had, which I talk about often, and like the gator getting my sister and the swamp, and drain the swamp is what they say, whatever, I don't know. But I was thinking about this, and the Lord told me to look at this, and I was looking at it. And so it says, Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. You have so little faith, Jesus said. Why did you doubt me? And I love how Jesus asked a question. Like, I always have so many questions, right? And I think I heard a preacher talk about one time. Jesus always answered things like with a question. You have so little faith. Why did you doubt me? And you'd think Peter would be going, Jesus, why did you come this route? Like, why did you come and scare me, number one? Why did it have to go like this, right? And so he says to Peter, this is crazy, right? But why do you doubt me? Like, why do you have such little faith? Like, I just told you to leave the boat. I told you to walk out here on water. You were afraid thinking I was a ghost. You know who I am. And then you're right here in front of me and you decide, like, okay, I'm going to sink. And then I thought how Jesus was baptizing people. And they were baptizing people in water. And I was like, and it's sin, right? But when he pulled Peter back up out of the water, I think he was cleansed. And I was like, I don't know why. I thought about that. And, like I think about Jesus knowing the beginning from the end, the middle, and, all that stuff. And I was like, he already knew that was going to happen. And I was like, Lord, is that your way of like cleansing him? Like him falling down and descending, coming back up, like cleansed. And then, traveling around telling people about Jesus, preaching. And so, listen, then I'm like praying, I'm in the spirit. And maybe, somebody else will understand this better than I did, but this is what was coming to me in my spirit. And so then I'm like in the spirit and I'm like, I hear Ezekiel. And I heard Ezekiel 8. And I was in the spirit for, a little bit longer. I'm listening. And like Ezekiel. Okay. And then I'm gonna get my phone, right, to look at the Bible, and the Lord tells me to grab my regular Bible. Right? And so I grab it and tells me to read the beginning. And in the beginning it says, like stubborn children refusing to obey their father, the people of Israel often refused to listen to God. And like a loving parent, God repeatedly called his people back to obedience. He sent prophets like Ezekiel to preach messages of judgment and restoration. According to his book, Ezekiel was a priest who was among captives taken to Babylon when the Jews were deported in 597 BC. There in Babylon, God called him to be a prophet, and he began to warn his people that Jerusalem's judgment was not yet complete. His preaching was not well received by the Jews who were with him in captivity. They thought he should be giving messages of comfort and hope, not judgment. But Ezekiel's dire predictions came true. As Jerusalem was destroyed in 586 BC, from then on the people listened carefully to his preaching. After this, Ezekiel's message changed from one judgment to one of comfort and hope. The worst was past. It was time to begin again. And so I just done a short or whatever you call it. I posted a video and I was talking about grace being given. And yesterday was it yesterday? I don't know. I've been talking about hope, and I have hope, or hope deferred makes the heart sick. And so, no matter what, I have hope, and we already have hope. And I've been trying to encourage people to have hope. It's like that. So I was like, okay, Lord, what are you meaning here? And then he told me to go on and read Ezekiel chapter 1. And so I was reading through it, and it's talking about a vision. And I'm like, okay, so I'm reading it. And then I get to okay. And then it says, above the surface was something that looked like a throne made of blue lapis lazuli. And on this throne, high above, was a figure whose appearance resembled a man. From what appeared to be his waist up, he looked like gleaming amber, flickering like a fire. And from his waist down, he looked like a burning flame, shining with splendor. All around him was a glowing halo, like a rainbow shining in the clouds on a rainy day. This is what the glory of the Lord looked like to me. When I saw it, I fell face down on the ground, and I heard someone's voice speaking to me. So I've been hearing the Lord speak to me, right? And when he said Ezekiel 1:8, I was like, okay, which I started reading in Ezekiel, but I read again in 8, right? And it says, and the first one was July 31st. And then it says, then September 17th, during the 6th year of King Jehoshaphat, Jehoiachin, wait, is it Jehoiachin captivity? I don't really know how to pronounce this stuff, okay? And it's okay, I won't go into the ground yet. While the leaders of Judah were in my home, the sovereign Lord took hold of me. I saw a figure that appeared to be a man. From what appeared to be his waist down, looked like a burning flame. From the waist up, he looked like gleaming amber. He reached out what seemed to be a hand and took me by the hair. Then the Spirit lifted me up into the sky, transported me to Jerusalem in a vision from God. I was taken to the north gate of the inner courtyard of the temple, where there is a large idol that has been made the Lord jealous. Suddenly the glory of God Israel was there, just as I had seen it before in the valley. Then the Lord said to me, Son of man, look toward the north. So I looked, and there to the north, beside the entrance of the gate to the altar, stood the idol that had made the Lord so jealous. Son of man, he said, do you see what they are doing? Do you see the detestable sins the people of Israel are committing to drive me from my temple? But come, and you will see even more detestable sins than these. Then he brought me to the door of the temple courtyard, where I could see a hole in the wall. He said to me, Now, son of man, dig into the wall. So I dug into the wall and found a hidden doorway. And so I'm reading this and I'm like, whoa, and then I think somebody called me an ass today, and I was like, Jesus came riding in on a donkey. And then I read this, and I was like, whoa. And then I heard the Lord speak to me and said, and Jesus will come riding in on a cloud. And I was like, whoa, what does all this mean? Right? And I'm like, the Lord is coming back, right? And I was thinking, okay, this is a lot to take in. And so like I was like, and then when the Lord was like, I want you to share this, and I'm like, and he said, just listen. He said, just listen. And I was like, I'm gonna listen, right? And sometimes the Lord will have you do things that you don't understand. And he said, and I was like, Lord, why do you have me do things that I don't understand? And he said, I want you to listen, but no, there's somebody else listening that will know what I'm saying. And I'm like, okay, Lord. Okay, Lord. And it doesn't mean like I'm not gathering anything that he's saying, but I was just like, and then I was worshiping, and the Lord was showing me like this glow, and I was like, okay. And He just said something else. I don't know. I'm gonna look and see. And no matter what, I trust the Lord. It doesn't matter, like I said, if I'm crying, if I'm biting my nails, if I get a little anxious, I trust the Lord. I have faith. And I have been getting in the word and I've been hearing messages like from pastors. And I was just listening to Brother Hagan and it's talking about, you know, our faith grows by hearing the word and not just hearing the word from preachers, although that's really good, but also reading the word for ourselves and like prayer for me and being led by the Lord. And I'm about to really I just looked down and it says the desolation of Israel. The trumpet calls Israel's army to mobilize, but no one listens. For my fury is against them all. There is war outside the city and disease and famine within. Those outside the city walls will be killed by enemy swords. Those inside the cities will die from famine and disease. The survivors who escape to the mountains will moan like doves, weeping for their sins. Their hands will hang limp. Their knees will be weak as water. They will dress themselves in burlap. Horror and shame will cover them. They will shave their heads in sorrow and remorse. They will throw their money in the streets, tossing it like worthless trash. Their silver and gold won't save them. On that day, the Lord's anger, it will neither satisfy nor feed them, for their greed can only trip them up. They were proud of their beautiful jewelry and used it to make detestable idols and vile images. Therefore, I will make all their wealth disgusting to them. I will give it as plunder to foreigners, to the most wicked of the nations, and they will defile it. I will turn my eyes from them as these robbers, and then defile my treasured land. Prepare chains for my people, for the land is bloodied by terrible crimes. Jerusalem is filled with violence. I will bring the most ruthless of nations to occupy their homes. I will break down their proud fortresses and defile the sanctuaries. Terror and trembling will overcome my people. They will look for peace, but will not find it. Calamity will follow calamity. Rumor will follow rumor. They will look in vain for a vision from the prophets. They will receive no teaching from the priests, no counsel from leaders. The king and prince helpless. Weeping will spare, and the people's hands will tremble with fear. I will bring on them the evil they have done to others, and they will receive the punishment they so richly deserve. They will know that I am the Lord. And so, okay, I just looked down and seen it. Well, um, claiming amber meaning says the real meaning of glowing amber. The sky is lit up with fire and gleaming amber. The original Hebrew word for gleaming amber is chasmal. When God caught Ezekiel for the first time, he put on a quite a show. The sky lit up with fire and gleaming amber. The original Hebrew word for gleaming amber is chasmal. This is a very rare word appearing only in the book of Ezekiel. For centuries, translators have scratched their heads concerning the meaning of this word. It is obvious something shiny. But what exactly the first translation of the Hebrew Bible, the 3rd century Greek rendered this? Okay. Hmm. Bear with me. It says newly discovered electricity is cited a mysterious word because it had been first translated in electron was a perfect fit. And so to this day, which looks like I just stuck my hand in a socket too on electricity. Okay. And so to this day, the modern word for electricity is very ancient but brilliant. Chasmal. So electricity. And then there was light. That's all I can think is light in the darkness, electricity. That's all that came to me. But I just think, like I know the Lord was leading me into just knowing that, and which I've been saying all day, He's good, He's faithful, and He's He calls us out of comfortable situations, and things can get really uncomfortable and scary and terrifying even sometimes. And you know, he I think I I know He was just reminding me that I'm being used for something that I can't even see right now. And sometimes I don't even understand. Um, but I do know I understand His voice. I know His voice. And He just continuously confirms that I'm okay. And He's just teaching me. He's teaching me to obey. He's teaching me to listen. He's teaching me to hear and to wait, and to know He's God and to be still, not to worry so much.